We will now start the press conference by Minister Hayashi.
I have been appointed to be the foreign minister in the second reshuffled Kishida cabinet. I am looking for your continued cooperation. In the 9 months since I was appointed to be the foreign minister in November last year, the international situation has changed with a very fast speed. Against this backdrop, based upon the foundation accumulated by the Japanese diplomatic activities, I have visited 17 countries, and I have had
meetings
in person as well as on virtual format approximately 240 times to build relationship of trust with the foreign ministers of different countries in responding to foreign policy issues. International society is now at a historical crossroads, whether we will be able to maintain international order, the free and open and rules-based international order, as well as enjoy peace and prosperity or not. We are at a critical juncture. Ukraine is continued to be invaded by Russia, which is an extremely serious issue, which shakes the very foundation of international order, not just for Europe, but including Asia. The China's a series of military activities recently, as well as launching of ballistic missiles to the near seas of Japan, including EEZ, is also a serious issue involving the national security as well as safety of our people. The North Korea's nuclear and missile programs and the attempts to unilaterally change the status quo by force in East and South China Seas, and also heightening of tension with a change in military balance. The security environment is very difficult and uncertain. In order to respond to these issues, we will be formulating the national security strategy towards the end of this year, and we will contribute to the discussion on drastically strengthening our defense capabilities. And as the basic policies have laid out, we will expand our official development aid as well as to drastically strengthen our diplomatic executions and try to further reinforce the foreign policy capabilities. And against this backdrop, we will further deepen a Japan-US alliance, which is the cornerstone for Japanese foreign and security policies, and we will further to reinforce the deterrence and response power, and we will further strengthen the economic security, including the follow-up of the economic 2+2. With the like-minded countries, the G7 policy coordination will be made ever more closer. We will be utilizing the free and open Indo-Pacific to be realized, which is increasingly important as Japan will be in the presidency of G7 next year. We will actively develop the maintenance and the development of international order based upon universal values. As the international society is increasingly divided, we need to strengthen the function of United Nations, including the reform of Security Council. We need to have a global governance to be considered to respond to the new issues. And for Ukrainian the invasion, we will continue our economic sanctions to resolutely respond, and we will strengthen our support to Ukraine and neighboring countries. For the free and open Indo-Pacific, we will base ourselves on a cornerstone of Japan-US alliance, and we'll utilize the Quad and work with ASEAN, Europe, as well as the Pacific Island countries. And through TICAD 8, we will strengthen collaboration with Africa on abduction, nuclear and missile issues of North Korea. We will firmly respond, and we will further promote Japan-US ROK cooperation for the world without the nuclear weapons to be realized. We will respond to the REFCON of the NPT, and we will further promote the endeavors by the government. Although we have surmounting the foreign policies, we are at an epochal change right now as a foreign minister. We will work with three determinations: determination to fully defend universal values, determination to fully safeguard the peace and stability of Japan, as well as determination to contribute to the humankind and take on leadership role in the international community, including the nuclear disarmament, non-proliferation, as well as the global issues such as the climate change. We will take on a balanced and stable posture with high level of readiness to open a new frontier of Japanese diplomacy. As for the former unified the church, Prime Minister Kishida has instructed that we should remove the doubts of the Japanese people, and as a responsibility of each individual politician, we should check and severely review. And for myself, I am sorry that in the year 2012, 10 years ago, I have confirmed that I have been interviewed with an organization related to Unified Church, and I would like to commit myself that there will be no relationship whatsoever from now onwards.
Question, please. Nobita-san from Asahi newspaper. You have mentioned your interview by a related body from former Unification Church. In the previous press conference, you said that you had nothing to do with the church, but what is the development behind this discovery, and what was this interview about? On August 2nd, my understanding was that former Unification Church I had no relationship with. That is what I said at that meeting, but as a result of the instruction given by the Prime Minister, I conducted a review, and in 2012, I did give an interview by a related body, and that was disclosed. But in any case, I will no longer have any relationship at all with the relevant bodies. Now, in February of 2012, from World Daily, Security and Budget Matters, there was a request for an interview to my office, parliamentarian's office, and that is what I accommodated.
Next question, please, from Kyodo News, Mr. Maeda. Now, about your relationship with Unified Church. So you have already reviewed that situation, so there will be no further relationship whatsoever. But in checking and for election activities, I do think that it will be quite safe. I have made the check once again, and as far as I have checked, from the organization that you have referred to, there have been no donation or no support on electoral activities. Next question, please.
Next, Tanaka-san from GG Press. Now, diplomatic challenge, Japan-South Korea relations. Japanese companies, former civilian workers from the Korean Peninsula, liquidation of assets could take place within the month. That is according to some reports. What is the current situation? How urgent is it? What is your awareness, and how do you intend to deal with the issue? Now, Japan-Korea relations, including response to North Korea, for the stability of the region, Japan-South Korea, and U.S. coordination is essential. And as you have just pointed out, former civilian workers from the Korean Peninsula issue, as well as the convert women issue, the situation is very difficult, but we cannot leave the matter unattended. Keeping a promise between states is the basics of interstate relations. We want to restore the relationship to a sound footing based on our consistent position. We want to continue to have close communication with South Korea. And on my reappointment from the Prime Minister, he has instructed me to deal with the matter solidly because of the very difficult international situation. So in our relations with both South Korea and China, we would like to respond in this fashion.
Next question, please, from Asahi Shimbun. It is Nobai from Asahi Shimbun. Ever since you have been appointed in November last year, there has been a Russian invasion of Ukraine. You had to deal with very difficult diplomatic issues. Now, how do you assess your own performance? Now, in my own endeavors, as well as my thoughts going forward, I have already stated earlier As to the efforts for the foreign policy and the results of the foreign policy should be evaluated and assessed by the history. But having said so, if I may make further statements, in the past 9 months, international situation have changed dramatically. I have to respond to many diplomatic issues. As the person in charge of foreign policy in the Kishida cabinet, with the 3 determinations, I would like to open the new frontier for Japanese diplomacy with balanced and stable posture.
Next question, Masa-san from NHK. Iwasawa from NHK. Former Prime Minister Abe's state funeral is planned for the next month. What is the number of attendees and what are the plans of dignitaries to be attending the ceremony, the state funeral? Currently, concrete attendees to this state funeral is not decided at the Foreign Ministry. We will make sure that there will be no omissions in our accommodation of those who will be attending the state funeral. But as for the specifics, as I have said, it hasn't been decided yet.
Next question, please, from Kyodo News, Maeda-san. Yes, about the Unified Church once again. For Sekai Nippo, you have been interviewed back in 2012. What about the appropriateness? Do you think that it was proper? As I have already stated, now, for my parliamentary head office, there has been an application for the interview and I have responded. I did not know that organization was related to the Unified Church, and that was the reason why I have accepted the interview. As I have stated at the outset, I am very, very sorry that I did not know the relationship, but going forward there will be no relationship whatsoever. Next, please.
Asahari-san.
Panorama News, RP Japan. Congratulations on your appointment again, Mr.
Thank you.
My question is about the Middle East. The attacks by Israel on Gaza caused many casualties and destruction, maybe partly in Israel too. We know that there are some rockets at Israel that launch from Gaza, but the core of the problem is the Israeli occupation. So what is Japan plans to do on this problem? And Japan is against the change of status quo and against of invading other countries. So do you think that will be the new approach? Thank you.
On August 5th, local time, Israeli army conducted aerial bombings to the Gaza Strip, Palestinian armed groups' facilities, and in response, there had been rocket attacks from Gaza to Israel. So there has been this exchange of violent acts. But on the 7th local time, I understand that a ceasefire has been agreed to. With this clash, there are many casualties amongst the general public, and that is a big and deep concern for us. And I'd like to express my condolences to the victims' families. Japan hopes that this ceasefire would contribute to stabilization of the situation in Gaza so that it will lead to improvement of socio-economic situation locally. We hope that this ceasefire agreement will be maintained. We call on all stakeholders to comply with the agreement and call on their maximum self-restraint. The issue in the Middle East cannot be resolved through violence. We believe that it can only be resolved through negotiation and efforts to build confidence between the parties, and therefore we call on all those involved to make such efforts to the maximum extent. Next question.
Next question, please, from Mainichi Shimbun. This is Iwano. And if I may change the topic, just yesterday in Nagasaki, you have visited the Nagasaki Peace Memorial Museum. So what was your impression? And as you have touched the hearts of the people living in the place of atomic bombing, for the NPT to see good results, how will Japan have to make efforts going forward? for the Nagasaki peace memorial ceremony, as a foreign minister, I have accompanied the Prime Minister to attend the ceremony. At the ceremony, in various forms, for example, through chorus, and there has been message being presented with the local, with the residents at the center, that never ever such an act should happen. And then I have accompanied the Prime Minister Kishida together with the Minister of Health and Labor, as well as Minister of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries. I have visited the museum. And now, it is important to experience and know about the realities of the atomic bombing. I have always advocated for that, so this tragedy will never again be repeated. I have once again reaffirmed my commitment.
Next question from Nikkei Shimbun. My name is Miki from Nikkei Shimbun. I have a question about Taiwan. There has been some rising of tension near Taiwan, and the importance of evacuation of Japanese nationals is being discussed. The need for such evacuation plans, are there anything being considered? Now, Japanese nationals protection, Japanese nationals who are traveling abroad as well as staying abroad, this is one of the most important responsibilities of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So we always assume various situations where such evacuations of Japanese nationals would become necessary. We're making preparations. We're always conducting studies to enhance the ability to protect Japanese nationals. As for individual cases, I would refrain from stating the names and regions because of the nature of the matter, but in any case, we'll make sure that everything possible will be done to secure safety of Japanese nationals.
Next question, please. The Yomiuri Shimbun, Kaneko-san. This is Kaneko from Yomiuri Shimbun. Now, a related question. Next month, we will be celebrating the 50th anniversary of Japan and China resuming diplomatic relations. We are now at a very difficult situation. So, on Japan-China relations, have you been given any instruction from Prime Minister Kishida? Now, between Japan and China, because we are neighbors, there are many issues. The situation over Senkaku Islands, as well as the attempts to change the status quo unilaterally in the East and South China Seas, as well as expansion of active military activities in the surrounding areas of Japan, is a strong concern for region, including Japan, as well as international security. And especially the series of military activities by China recently is launching ballistic missiles to the near seas, including the Japanese EEZ. This is a serious issue involving the national security as well as the safety of the Japanese people. We have been condemning strongly and protesting, and we have asked for immediate cessation of such an act because it would seriously impact the peace and stability of the international society. And we have always made clear that we are always open on dialogue with China because communication is ever more important in these circumstances. And between our bilateral relations, what we need to assert needs to be asserted and ask for responsible actions by China, and we will cooperate for any shared issues to have a constructive and stable Japan-China relations. And now Prime Minister Kishida has said, because the international situation is rather difficult, we need to judiciously respond. And for our relationship with China and ROK, we will be responding firmly.
I have a question about a visit to Yasukuni Shrine. On the 15th of August, that is the anniversary of the end of the Pacific War. Do you plan to visit the Yasukuni Shrine on this day? As a member of the Kishida cabinet, I will make decisions as appropriate. That concludes the press conference today. Thank you very much.